You know, what happens when the very people who are supposed to help you end up misunderstanding you so badly that they actually become part of the problem? Today, we're going to dive into a story that really gets to the heart of that question. It's about a family's desperate plea, and it's about what they wish social workers truly understood. It almost always starts with a single, powerful judgment, doesn't it? A label. And in this story, the system looked at a child who was struggling and saw only one thing: defiance. And of course, from there, the judgment just spreads. I mean, if the child is defiant, then the conclusion seems pretty simple, right? The parents must be doing a bad job. They must be bad parents. A not profound misunderstanding. That's the reality we are going to unpack. All right, section 1, a child misunderstood. Let's get into the story behind that judgment. So, this forces us to ask the really important question here. If it wasn't defiance, and it definitely wasn't bad parenting, what was actually going on? Well, the answer, as you'll see, has very little to do with behavior and absolutely everything to do with biology and that child's personal history. Okay, moving on to section 2, brain, not behavior. This is where we get into the hidden diagnosis. To really get it, we've got to look right past what we can see, the behavior, and focus on the invisible source, the brain. So the first big piece of this puzzle is something called fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, or FASD. Now, the most crucial thing to get here is that this is not a behavioral choice. Not at all. It's a permanent physical brain injury. It's caused by alcohol exposure before birth. I mean, just try to imagine for a second that the very wiring in your brain for things like memory, learning, controlling your impulses was physically changed. That is the day in, day out reality for someone living with FASD. And the second piece is this concept called trauma-informed care. Now, this isn't some specific therapy you go to. It's a totally different way of looking at people. It completely flips the script. Instead of asking what's wrong with you, which, it's all about blame, it asks what happened to you. It's a framework that understands that making someone feel safe, both physically and emotionally, isn't just a nice little bonus. It's the absolute non-negotiable first step before anything else can happen. So when you put those two things together, you finally see the whole picture, right? You have a child who's dealing with the double whammy of a permanent brain injury and the constant stress of trauma. So what the system was calling defiance was really just a brain struggling to cope. It was never ever about a kid who wouldn't behave. It was about a kid who literally couldn't. Not without a totally different kind of support anyway. And that brings us to section 3, a plea for help. So with all this going on, what did this family actually need? And their plea, gosh, when you really hear it, it's just so simple, it's heartbreaking. It all started with them trying to make one thing crystal clear. They weren't asking for a free pass. They were literally begging for the right tools to help their child. But instead of services, they just got judgment. You know, what they really needed to hear wasn't some complicated jargon or a 10-page plan. Not at first, anyway. It was just two incredibly simple but powerful things. Someone to finally validate what they were going through, and a promise to help. But what did they get from the system? The exact opposite. Instead of help, they were just thrown into this endless cycle of paperwork and, frankly, intimidation. And all that did was make everything worse. It just deepened the trauma and destroyed any chance of trust. When you boil it all down, what they were asking for really just comes down to two things. The solution was never going to be found in another thick binder of assessments or another scary letter. It was just empathy and action. Empathy to see their struggle for what it was, and action to finally give them the support they'd been pleading for. So that leads us right into our final section, section 4, from judgment to action. Okay, so how do we actually build a better path forward? I mean, just look at this disconnect. It's laid out so clearly. On one side, you have the system's response, which is all about control, judgment, endless assessments, threats. And on the other side, you have what the family actually needed, which is all about human connection, belief, real help, empathy. And it's in that huge gap between control and connection. That's where families get lost. So the mission, really, is to figure out how to bridge that gap. So how do we do it? Well, the path forward really seems to come down to 3 big shifts. First, we have to start with belief. That's the whole #BelieveParents idea. just trust that they are the experts on their own kids. Second, we have to get serious about training. Professionals need to be able to spot invisible disabilities like FASD. That's why hashtag FASD training matters. And third, we need to make hashtag trauma-informed care the default setting for the entire system. So the automatic response is always support, never punishment.
And ultimately, all of this, it just comes down to one shared responsibility for all of us. Let's learn. It's a call to action, really, for everyone. Social workers, teachers, doctors, even just neighbors, for all of us to look past the surface level stuff and really commit to understanding the whole, messy, complex human picture.
And that really leaves us with one last huge question to think about. What if we completely redesign the system so that empathy wasn't some optional extra, but the very first assessment? I mean, before a single form was filled out, before any test was ordered, what if the first step was simply to believe? How much would that change for families like this one? That's the thought I want to leave you with.